Heads up before the video begins. My computer doesn't run Roblox the best, and I usually play this game on console instead. So I wasn't able to record my own footage for this video. Instead, you'll see other people's footage with the name of their YouTube channel to check out in the bottom left. Okay, that's it. On to the video. Happy Halloween, hopefully, depending on when this video comes out. It's that time of year again where all the generic possession movies are released, and YouTube begins swarming with horror game Let's Plays. So you know what that means. I'm gonna steal someone else's idea. Recently, my friend showed me this video by Wombu, which simultaneously got me into Spooky's Jump Scare Mansion and gave me an idea. Specifically, what if I did a video in a similar vein to this one about a certain game, or should I say experience, inspired by Spooky's Jump Scare Mansion? That's right. Today we're going to be talking about We're going to be talking about Pressure. Pressure very quickly has become one of my favorite games on Roblox, and I've played a lot of Roblox games lately. I've played Pressure. Roblox recently has become very stale, boring, and lifeless, so I'm happy to say that for once I can wholeheartedly recommend a game from it, even to people who don't play Roblox. Because Pressure is honestly one of the most polished Roblox games I've ever seen. This game is the third of the Roblox games inspired by Spooky's Jump Scare Mansion, with the others being Rooms and Doors. I kind of flip-flop between whether or not I like Pressure or Doors better, but for now I've got to go with Pressure. So, what are the rules of this ranking? Well, the Pressure Wiki includes a list of all entities in the game, however, some of these don't really fit in. For an entity to be on this list, it must actually be able to kill you. That excludes some of the entities that are on the wiki list, such as the Painter, Styx, the Man from the Multiverse, etc. I'm sorry, fans of my wife, that one doesn't count. The second rule is that it must be attainable in public lobbies right now. Death Angel and the Educator can both kill you, but are only spawnable by admins in your lobby. And the final rule only really applies to two characters that I don't think fit in. And those characters are Sebastian and the Turrets. Sebastian because yes, he can kill you, but he still doesn't really fit in with the rest of the entities on this list, and unless you accidentally manage to flash his eyes twice with the flash beacon, he's not a threat at all. And the Turrets because they're inanimate objects and, like, I don't know, that just feels like including the snares from Doors.
Also, no, I won't be talking about the Raveyard entities because I'm not editing 3 more segments in the span of one day.
It's also worth noting that the Angler has 5 variants, all of which have their own spots. This gives us 15 entities to cover, all of which will be judged based on how scary they are, how good their designs are, how fun their mechanics are, how challenging they are, and their documents. With that being said, let's start the list off with the very worst Pressure entity. I can honestly say that I enjoy most entities in this game. Every entity feels like the same level of care was put into designing them, even this bottom spot. However, I could definitely say, without a doubt, that there is one entity in Pressure that I just flat out do not like, and that entity is Chainsmoker. I hate this entity so much. Chainsmoker really feels like a downgrade from Angler in every possible way. He's like if you took the Angler and injected him with so much unfiltered tedium and dry out every aspect that made him good, and then give him arthritis. Chainsmoker's main mechanic is that he's the Angler, but he takes 5 billion years to reach you, and you can't hide in a closet for as long. That's it. I don't see why he had to be in the game. Anytime I try going into a closet and I'm almost immediately kicked out, my only reaction is, oh no, not this again. It's painful. Especially if you're in a room with adjacent rooms, so you just stand there until he passes by and crop dusts the whole room. His design sucks also. That's not a scary creature, it's a rotting potato. The only, and I mean only good aspect about Chainsmoker is that his death scene is honestly really cool. Spooky's Jump Scare Mansion has some entities like the Food Demon, Dearlord, or Whiteface, where after you die you can actually wander around a room for a bit, and Chainsmoker is the only entity in Room, Doors, or Pressure that has that mechanic. It's such a shame that such a cool concept was wasted on a tedious entity to deal with. I guess the only other good thing about Chainsmoker is the fact that of the variants of the Angler, he's one of the rarer appearances. Next entity. Pressure sure had boss fights. I might be alone in thinking that Pressure's boss fights are very underwhelming considering how both of them are just you running around and doing a thing. That's not to say either of them are bad. Like I said, Chainsmoker's the only entity in the game I actively don't like. This one is just kind of average. But I don't think it comes to much of a surprise that I think the weaker of the two bosses is easily the Trench Bleeders. I really hate to put the Trench Bleeders this low, because their very existence raises a lot of interesting questions to ponder about. Each Trench Bleeder is named after a different person, but one of them is redacted. What's up with that? Lucy is able to freely roam the ocean after all the minerals are extracted, while the others are deactivated. Why? And why does Mr. Shade fire anyone who denies this request? It really sucks that besides those interesting questions, the Trench Bleeders' backstories are just an absolute bore. They were giant robots made to extract minerals from money. That's it. We know their exact origins, so there's no mystery surrounding any of them besides Lucy. Why would you waste the biggest entity in your game on one that doesn't intentionally try to hurt you? I don't get it. And their mechanic is just, whoa, don't let them step on you. It sucks, because this should have been an easy slam dunk. Their designs are pretty cool. They're like walking oil rigs, but they just don't fit into the world of Pressure very well compared to everything else. As it stands, the Trench Bleeders are an okay entity, but really just feel like missed potential. Next entity. Okay, now we have the only bad entity out of the way and the only average entity out of the way. Everything from here on out is good. I can't think of a segue for Squiddles. Squiddles does everything the Trench Bleeder's backstory didn't really do. Keep the origin of the entity a secret. We don't know where Squiddles originates from, but they kind of go about this in a bit of a lazy way as well. There was a power outage one day, then they were there. That's it. That being said, I kind of like their designs a lot. Their faces range from being a bit goofy to genuinely pretty uncanny, but it mostly leans towards the latter. They're hard to see in dark rooms because they blend in with the backgrounds, but don't use a light source to see them better because that's how they get ya. I'm willing to admit that because of Squiddles, I've never used any light source outside of the black light. I just don't want to risk it. But that's really another problem with Squiddles. They're a joke to avoid. Just don't buy a flashlight and bam, good to go. The dark rooms in Pressure aren't really that dark. And yeah, Squiddles also targets you if you get too close to them, but like, just walk away. Overall, Squiddles is a good entity with a lot holding it back. They have a good design and a good concept, but all they were lacking in was challenge. I think it would have been a better idea if they attacked you as soon as you touched them. That way people will be inclined to use flashlights so they don't accidentally run into them. Next entity. I really should specify that number 12 is a massive step up from number 13. I know this is a beloved entity from the game, but honestly, I can't see it in the same way a lot of people do. And maybe I'm just not getting something. Just know, I still like this entity, just nowhere near as much as everyone else. With that being said, the Searchlights is number 12.
You what?
I wanted to love the Searchlights so badly. There's so much about them to love, but it's dragged down a ton by its other aspects. I guess I'll get the Searchlights' negative aspects out of the way first. This gameplay loop is repetitive as all hell. Fix a generator, hi. Fix a generator, hi. Fix a generator. Adding 2 more Searchlights doesn't make the gameplay more interesting because do you want to know what 3 Searchlights adds to the experience? More waiting. Actually, that was really the only negative aspect about this entity. But gameplay is kind of important in a game, so that's why it's so low. Besides that, this is a great entity. I love how the Searchlights aren't supernatural or a failed experiment. It's just a wild animal. It doesn't even have a Z classification. Speaking of which, this design is outstanding. It's so intimidating. I love the orange glow it emanates over the place and the weird tendrils hanging down. The theme is a bop too. It's one of the best tracks from the game. To top it all off, the death animation you get is also great. Just being harpooned up into its mouth. Again though, gameplay. Whatever though, Searchlights is still a good entity, but it's bogged down a lot by its gameplay. Next entity. Okay, anyways, where am I right now? Oh, I'm just approximately a kilometer under the Atlantic Ocean. It's pretty dark, but at least I have a friend to light it up down here. I didn't mention its document back when I talked about Chainsmoker, but that's because it just makes the most sense to talk about it here, and every variant of the Angler has the same document anyways. I love this thing purely conceptually. I like how they bring in things such as Angler's face always facing you no matter what angle you look at it from, and explain it screaming by saying that it's partially blind and uses echolocation, which also explains why it doesn't come after you if you see it from afar. But my favorite part of the Angler's documentation has to be the way it kills you. I've always assumed it eats you, but according to the document, it literally just phases through you and bam, neurotrauma. No wounds, no bleeding, nothing. It also raises the question of why it even hunts if it doesn't eat its prey. Maybe it siphons their energy or something, I don't know. The design is great too, way better than Russian doors. Something about anglerfish always creeped me out, so making an entity based on what they look like just does something for me. Next entity. Who are you? I'm you, but stronger. Frogger is the Angler, but with a better design, and he runs through the room multiple times. Yep, that's it. Do you want to know something that surprised me when I read all the entity documents? There are barely any entities that were the result of some cruel experiment. Ones that were regular people or animals twisted into something grotesque. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the only experiment gone wrong in the whole game is the... And oh boy does the Ifestation deliver. Even outside of the Ifestation itself, reading about the BUPWM program made my skin crawl. In fact, I can't abridge this, so I'm just going to read the document verbatim. The BUPWM program was an experiment to allow an individual to kill someone telepathically through eye contact by beaming highly radioactive rays through a victim's optic nerve, causing their brain to melt inside of their head. The experiment consisted of gouging out the eyeballs of the patient, placing them in a jar of genetically altered rotten coral for 18 hours, injecting the new rotten eyeballs with 20 milliliters of CT19, before surgically implanting them back into the patient. Wow, that's messed up. Could you imagine if it could get any worse? For the procedure to work properly, the patient must be conscious the entire time and must not be put under the effects of anesthesia, painkillers, or any other forms of drugs that alter the patient's brain chemistry. As for the Ifestation itself, I mean, look at it. Its design isn't scary, not even in the slightest, it's just cool. And I love the voices that it makes you hear. It makes me wonder if they did anything different when experimenting on the shark.
To my eyes, all your friends, your family, loved ones, you'll get to see them again if you simply look into its eyes. I know you can hear me talking to you. Don't let them tell you otherwise. Don't believe what you've read. Look into my eyes. Look into my eyes. Look into my eyes. Look into my eyes. Why are you not looking? Do you not want to see them again? Do you not miss them? Do you hate them? You'll never get to see them again unless you look into my eyes.
The painter will originally come in during an Ifestation encounter and add a time or two. The only real problem with the Ifestation is that it really doesn't pose much of a threat since you could just look down.
Hi there, this is Ash while editing the video. I would like to point out that at this part of the video, I said that you could simply avoid the Ifestation by looking downwards. I now realize that this only works on console and not on PC.
Still though, disturbing backstory, great design, maybe a little too easy. Next entity. So, I've talked about some pretty beloved entities so far. Searchlights, Angler, Ifestation, Squiddles, etc. So tell me, What do you think I've put at number 8 above all of those iconic pressure entities? Wrong. Mr. Lopi is kind of a hard one to place, to be honest. I could really put him anywhere. He doesn't really have a gameplay mechanic, being basically just a way to make sure the group stays together, but man is he effective at that. He's one of the most unnerving entities in the game. Listen to the sound he makes while he follows you. He's very clearly inspired by the Interloper ARG, and man oh man was that a good choice for an entity like this, because this guy is kind of creepy. The fact he only appears if you're alone, combined with how uncommon interactions with him are, make him feel all the more uncanny. And when you die by it, you're straight up not allowed to see his document. It's not even like the multi-monster, where you can see his document, but the rest of it will never be unredacted. Sebastian just straight up can't show you his document. Again, the only things holding this entity back are the lack of any gameplay mechanics, and the fact that the name Mr. Lopi makes it a bit harder to take him seriously. But man, what a great hidden entity. Next entity. Okay, I was gonna come up with some stupid excuse for why number 7 doesn't have a proper intro, but I think it'd be more honest to just say I thought the original intro was very cringy and didn't want to rewrite it. Sorry. Dear God, I love Blitz. Imagine for a second you're just exploring the Hadal Black site. The lights flicker, so you wait until you hear the angler scream to hide. But something is strange here. The lights flickered twice. That's not normal. Oh well, probably just a glitch or something. But before you can even process that you just heard his scream, you're dead. What was that? Why was it so much faster, so much more aggressive than the angler? It's because it wasn't the angler. It was Blitz. The feeling you get when the lights flicker twice is one of, oh god, I've gotta hide, I need to hide, why is the locker so far away, this is how it all ends, oh my god, I actually made it.
What was it this time?
Usually you might have a locker right next to you or something. That's easy. But then it happens in one of the big rooms with the long catwalks and a locker on the other side. Holy God. Those are some of the tensest moments in the whole game. And while there is one more angler variant I haven't talked about yet, Blitz easily has the scariest design of them all. It's not even close. Look at this thing. The 3 eyes in one socket, the fact that 2 of his teeth are oversized, the fact you can't even discern what expression he's making, it's all great. Combine that with the fact this guy just comes off as so much more aggressive than the average pressure entity, and you've got yourself an amazing little coked up gremlin. Why the f did I write that? Overall, Blitz has done fantastically. Next entity. Originally, the Puddles of Voidmass was at number 12 on the list. Yeah, I just kind of let the simple mechanic overshadow everything else about this entity. If you climb into a locker infested by it, you die. Simple as that. But before I get to the best aspect of this entity, I should talk about how I've also grown fond of this mechanic's simplicity. There are so many times where I was trying to quickly find a hiding spot from Pinky, Blitz, or Pandemonium and accidentally hopped in a locker with a puddle of Voidmass in it. It's this entity's presence that keeps the player on their toes throughout the entirety of their run, making them second guess whether they've truly escaped the danger of one of the node monsters. That's not why the Puddles of Voidmass are so high, though. They're this high because they have far and away the best backstory in the whole game. I'm gonna have to cheat a little bit here by using both the document for the Puddles of Voidmass and another entity that I excluded, the Valkula Voidmass. But you really can't talk about one without talking about the other. What we can glean from the document of the entity itself is that it was spawned from the entity ZV0 after a containment breach caused by Sebastian, where CCTV cameras captured these gorgeous pictures of them crawling. I ran out of breath. Where CCTV cameras captured these gorgeous pictures of them crawling around. We're putting that one on the fridge. Before they hid in enclosed areas like lockers waiting for their prey to come to them. Not only does this characterize the Puddles as an entity with an extremely unique hunting method, basically like a sentient version of a Venus flytrap. One thing that's particularly disturbing to digest, pun very much intended, is that it digests its prey alive, and especially brutal death for an entity in this game. But remember that ZV0 entity I mentioned earlier? ZV0 is another entity named the Valkula Void Mass, and I don't think I could do a better description of the Valkula Void Mass than the document itself does. Quote, ZV0, codename, the Valkula Void Mass, is a gigantic mass of nothingness spawning endless sentience puddle spawns from its dark and disgusting abyss. This thing is just flat out a chunk of void, one that spawns a wide variety of void creatures. The ones we see in the game are given the description ZV06, but they're just one of 6 entities this void can spawn. The others include a leech-esque creature, 2 types of humanoids, some strange 4-legged creature, and strangest of all, one where everything is redacted. The only redacted text in the Valkula Void Mass's document. The only reason the puddles of Void Mass were the only thing to escape ZV0's cell is that they're the only ones that can withstand the conditions outside of the cell. Imagine if everything else could too. The Valkula Void Mass would easily be the most dangerous entity in the whole game. I love the Lovecraftian vibes both of these entities emanate, constantly playing with the concept of infinite voids, its origin from somewhere in space, or the fact that we never get to see either of their true forms. We don't know what the Valkula Void Mass would look like if it was taken out of its cell, and we never see the true shape of the puddles take, since they're either in the shadows of a locker or in blurry CCTV footage. I just love this entity in concept, and its execution is a good way to keep the player on their toes. Hell, I may end up liking this entity more and more as time goes on. For now though, I'll keep it at number 6. Next entity. You know what? I guess I kind of lied at the beginning. About what, I hear you asking? About not talking about the painter. Yeah, I just found this out, but apparently Good People is the name given to the duo of the painter and these flesh piles. What an awesome idea for an entity. Getting you interested in its lore before you even read its document, with strange messages that seem like apologies appearing on the room number after they attack you. This is easily the scariest design in the game. It's genuinely so unbelievably great. These flesh piles were originally people who were assimilated into another entity called the Mask of Sadness after Sebastian put the mask on Dr. face. This is also one of the... How did I make that noise? This is also one of the harder entities to avoid. You really have to listen intently to hear anything from his fake doors. And if you do open the wrong door, you're greeted with one of the best monster designs that I've seen in a Roblox game. These things look so creepy, disturbing, but also cool. With one exception, that being the entity at number 1 on this list. I'd say the Good People are the best designed entity in the whole game. The carved looking smile, the stained mask, the meaty mask that seems to have appendages placed everywhere with no rhyme or reason. It's all absolutely amazing monster design. To make the Good People an even better entity, the painter is always nice to see, whether it's getting his own room, a turret, or here when you accidentally pick the wrong room. I also can't help but feel bad for these guys, especially reading their messages on the number display, which I'm just realizing, and this isn't in the script, implies that they still have some type of sentience even when they're part of this mass they can't control. Jesus Christ. The only thing that keeps this entity from being any higher is that I hate getting a big room with this entity in it because it means I have to walk 5,000 miles to get to the other door, and then 5,000 miles back to check on the other door again. Repeat until I find out what the right door is. Next entity. Do you want to talk about surprising first encounters with an entity? Yeah? No? I don't care, I can't hear you. Why are you talking to a computer screen, dummy? Of every entity in Pressure, there's one I had a way stronger first impression of. Of every entity in Pressure, there's one I had a way stronger first impression of than most, and the... What is this wording? Of every entity in Pressure, there is one I had a way stronger first impression than most, and one that makes my heart race every time. Why is it worded like this? Of every entity in Pressure, there's one that had a way stronger first impression than most, and one that makes my heart race every time I hear her. That entity being Pinky. I can't believe an entity named Pinky is easily one of the most stressful entities to get in the whole game. I won't lie, this gal gives me a heart attack every time she appears. I wrote "I won't die" in the script. Put yourself in my shoes for a second. You're walking through the hallways, picking up key cards, opening doors, when all of a sudden you stop whatever you're doing when you hear this gal screaming her way down the halls in the distance. So you have to make a beeline to the nearest locker, else she comes through and gives you neurotrauma. It's like what I was talking about with Blitz earlier, where she's easy to avoid when you're near a locker, but when you're in one of the rooms with the long catwalk and the nearest lockers on the other side, it's incredibly tense. But the thing that makes Pinky so much more stressful is the fact that you have even less time to react to her. With Blitz, you hide in the locker the second you see those lights flicker. With Pinky, you hear her scream get procedurally closer to you, closing in and giving you a ticking clock in your head. You don't see her, you don't know where she is, but she's getting closer. And that feeling is so unbelievably anxiety-inducing. Pinky has a first encounter unlike any other, aside from part 1. Number 3... Did I say part 1? Apart from number 1. Number 3 is easily the scariest entity, but it just kind of takes you by surprise the first time you come by it. Number 2 is similar, having even less time to react than Pinky, but with the trade-off that there's no chance to build up that sense of dread like you can with Pinky. I'm honestly tempted to move Pinky even higher, but I must admit these top 3 entities are just better in every way than she is. Next entity. Okay, like I said earlier, number 3 is easily the scariest entity in the game, despite not being the best. But despite that, I barely see people talk about this entity, which shocked me because every time I play Pressure, the fact this entity could show up at any moment contributes to the horror. I'm of course talking about the Wall Dwellers. Jesus Christ, how does a Roblox game manage to make me so paranoid? The best way to describe the sheer terror of a Wall Dweller encounter is by describing a little situation. Imagine you're walking through an abandoned warehouse or something. You know full well that you're the only person there. Keyword, person. You're just kind of looking around for a bit, gawking at all the stations where people used to work, until you hear something. Footsteps. Footsteps in a place where you should be entirely alone. Footsteps that sound just like yours. And even worse, they're getting closer. I've just described the average Wall Dweller encounter. These things sound so simple at first. If you hear footsteps, just look at them and they'll go away. But there's one catch. They're quiet. They're so faint that they're almost inaudible. Because of how quiet they are, you have to turn up the game's volume considerably to actually hear them. And do you know what that means? Other sounds also start becoming louder. Other sounds that could be confused for footsteps. I've had several situations in this game where I felt like I was being followed by a Wall Dweller only to realize that nothing was behind me at all. No entity is able to make me feel anxious in its absence besides this one. And when you do hear those footsteps, it's chilling. When I'm controlling the game, it's like I almost snap my character's neck turning around. And then when one of the node entities like the Angler comes running in while it's following you and you hide in the closet, leaving the Wall Dweller out there to be killed, it's one of the most relieving feelings in the game. It's funny, because looking at the Wall Dweller's design on its own, it doesn't even look that scary. It's super simple, even if the Rotting Coral variant looks a bit uncannier. But it's the concept of them that makes their horror even better. That being that they hibernate in the walls until someone walks past them. A Wall Dweller could be near any corner, in any hallway, anywhere. You're never safe from one in this game. And when they kill you, they don't make a loud sound or any sound for that matter. They just silently knock you to the ground, take a bite out of your neck, and then you're dead. Not a single entity shows you your death that explicitly. They usually cut off right before it happens. So you know what this implies to me? You're still alive for a bit while this thing is eating you. And that thought really screws me up. Again, their simple design is a bit of a hindrance, but I think the Wall Dwellers are a presence that improves the game's horror a ton. Fantastic entity. And yet, there are 2 entities that were even better than this one. If you're a Pressure fan, by the time I reveal what number 2 is, you'll already know what my number 1 spot is. So I'm going to give you a suspenseful silence before I reveal it. Okay? Is that enough? Look, Is that enough silence? Okay, cool. Number 2 is the multi-monster. How do you take such an overused design that I have become completely desensitized to and make the entity this good? Well, the first step is to redo the design and make it fit in better with pressure. And oh boy, did they do that well. Everything has so much more texture than it does in the original design, and the paper-esque tears look great. It actually looks like a monster rather than a poorly photoshopped spooky face. A60 is in all 3 of the Roblox games inspired by Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion, originally appearing in rooms as the first entity you encounter, then doors in its secret rooms reimagining, and finally in Pressure is the rarest entity in the whole game. I think the rarity of the multi-monster is what makes it such an effective encounter. Your screen will get a barely noticeable static effect on it before some red text appears at the bottom of your screen. By the time that text appears at the bottom of your screen, you have exactly 4 seconds to hide, making the multi-monster easily the fastest entity in the game. Even more so than Blitz. This guy is so threatening to the player that the nickname the community has given the multi-monster is the Run Killer. But why do I have this entity placed so high? Well, it's simple. This entity's presence in the game intrigues me. I refuse to believe this is just an Easter egg that has no place in Pressure's canon. Why? Because the multi-monster has a document and appears in normal run-of-the-mill run. In fact, the multi-monster's document implies this guy might be the most dangerous entity in the whole game. Literally, all of it is redacted and will never be unredacted. I have a feeling we'll see the multi-monster return at some time in the future, specifically because of his exchanges with the player. Did I say the player? I didn't mean the character you play as. I mean you. One of his death messages, and he does specifically talk to you when he dies, says, "Your tasting games suck. Go play something else." But he also has a lot of exchanges with the player that implies he knows you, possibly from doors and rooms. We've been doing the same song and dance for years. Why do you still continue to fail? Remember me? I remember you. Hello, we meet again. Sorry I had to cut our talk short. It was nice seeing you again. So sad it had to be cut for short. And when you beat him, he actually seems to congratulate you and hope for your success. But there's one message he gives you that really piques my interest, and it's this one he has a chance to say after you beat him. "We both die tonight. One of us a bit later than the other." Not only does this imply that he knows you'll die even if you succeed at your mission, but for some unknown reason, he's also going to die tonight. I cannot wait to see what Pressure does with the multi-monster. I am so excited. I don't know if there will be another chapter or sequel game or what, but whatever it is, I'm excited to see where this story goes next. The multi-monster is the perfect showcase of Pressure's lore, but I'm going to be completely honest. There was no universe where the multi-monster would be number 1. No way in hell. Nothing could have possibly topped the actual number 1 spot on this list. Nothing even came close. Who am I talking about? Who do you think? Okay, microphone's working. Well, here we are, the best entity in the whole game. But before I talk about it, I want to first say thank you for watching up to this point. This video was not easy to make. In fact, I wasn't even sure if I would actually turn this script into a video. I'm glad I did though. Making this video has given me a new appreciation on what was already my favorite Roblox game. And I would like to give some thanks to both Wombu, who inspired me to make this video in the first place with his Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion ranking, Dre, who showed me Wombu's video, and everybody whose footage I've used while editing this video. Please check them all out in the paste bin in the description, because without their footage, this video wouldn't exist at all. But even then, there was a lot of uncertainty in the making of this video. I was uncertain if I would turn the script into a video, I was uncertain if I was going to get it out by Halloween, I was uncertain whether or not I would even be good. But you know one thing I was never uncertain about? This number 1 spot. I knew what it was going to be from the very beginning. If you don't know what that sound means, then keep that seatbelt fastened. I don't even know where to start here. Pandemonium is such a departure from every other entity that it's insane, even though he's just another node entity like the Angler or Pinky. So if this guy's just another node entity, why did I rank him as number 1? Well, I did it because you're stupid! He's not just another node entity, he's more than that. The first encounter you have with Pandemonium is unforgettable. For most people, they're familiar with the way the Angler or any of the Angler's different types work. See or hear a cue, hide, wait, Mazel tov. So if you've encountered the Angler or any of his other types, your first encounter with Pandemonium might just start out as any old node monster. Hell, if you haven't run into Frogger yet and are familiar with doors, you may even assume that this is about to be the pressure equivalent of Ambush from that game. But as soon as all those expectations quickly run through your head and Pandemonium reaches your room, he does something no other node monster does after you hide in the closet. He sees you. Even when you're in the closet, he sees you and starts screaming at you before appearing right outside of the closet doors. Suddenly you're thrown into a minigame where you have to keep your cursor in the middle of the screen, all while intense guitar music starts playing in the background. But Pandemonium isn't just gonna let you go that easily, as he starts ramming into the front of the locker, tossing your cursor to the ends of the screen, making it harder and harder to keep it in the middle. Even if you're used to these minigames, you will still be close to death at least once during it. The combination of the music, sound effects, and the difficulty of the minigame lead to an incredibly tense encounter and therefore a cathartic and satisfying feeling when you beat the minigame and Pandemonium leaves. This feeling of stress is further amplified if you've just evaded a wall dweller or are in the ridge. But what makes this entity all the better is the fact that Pandemonium is easily the best hunter in the game. Pandemonium rushes through the room just as fast as the Angler, can see you in the lockers, and can see you when you're not in its path. With every other node monster, you could just walk to some area of the room that isn't in the path between the entrance and exit doors. But with Pandemonium, unless you're really well hidden, he will see you. And when you try hiding from him and hear his scream, your heart drops as you realize you're dead even before he reaches you. And don't be too hard on yourself if your nervousness leads to your death at the hands of Pandemonium, because who wouldn't freak out after seeing this coming after you? This is the best designed entity in Pressure. It's not even close. Like Blitz, I can't tell what expression Pandemonium is making here, and the sprite where he has all of his eyes, for the lack of a better word, activate, is simply great. Especially the fact that some of his eyes are in his mouth. That's just a monster design trope I really like. And the colors as well. His general melted shape make it seem like he's rotting? And that's definitely intentional, because as the document says, Pandemonium is mostly carrion, the anomalous thing being that he's in a constant state of rotting without actually decaying. And speaking of Pandemonium's document, remember when I criticized Squiddle's document for keeping everything a secret without building any intrigue? What? You don't? But I added an entire frame clarifying this. Well, here's what I was talking about. Pandemonium's origin is a secret. They just found him. It's this aspect of him that makes me start to think, that being that some of his tissue contains synthetic polymers and man-made metals. Pressure takes place at the ocean floor, at a deeper depth than the Mariana Trench. And I guess plastic bags and stuff have been found down at the Mariana Trench. So it's possible that Pandemonium's existence is the result of pollution, or maybe even an experiment that Urban Shade wanted to cover up. Also, there's this line. When living targets are found, Z367 will attempt to trap them inside an orifice that resembles a toothed mouth, in which subjects are suffocated and dissolved by unknown chemical agents secreted within. Okay, first of all, just like I said back with the Puddles of Void Mass, that sounds like a really painful way to die. Second of all, what the hell do you mean an orifice that resembles a toothed mouth? To me, Pandemonium seems like the corpse of some other animal possibly killed by pollution that was taken over by some anomalous entity that's keeping the carcass alive, that entity being what the eyes belong to. And I didn't write this in the script, but I'm just realizing this right now. That means we still don't know what Pandemonium's true form looks like. This is all speculation though, and will probably never be confirmed. One last thing. A lot of documents would be lucky to have one awesome line in them. Pandemonium's is full of them. Like this gem. In the event that you're spotted, please prostrate yourself in a secure location and wait for the cleanup detail to retrieve your corpse. So yeah, this thing is the best Pressure entity, and it's not even close. This ranking made me appreciate the Puddles of Void Mass more, the good people are a great presence, the wall dwellers are horrifying, and A60 is intriguing, but number 1 was always going to be Pandemonium. It wasn't even a competition. Wow, that was 15 entities ranked. Good introduction, script writer. I don't know if anyone's ever going to hear this audio because, if I'm going to be honest, I wrote this script and recorded this audio for fun, and I don't know if I'm ever actually going to turn it into a video. If you're seeing this and aren't just stalking my laptop's video files, thanks for watching this video. I know this format was very similar to Wombu's format with the Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion specimen ranking video, but if I ever feel like doing this again, I might do Doors or even Apeirophobia if I ever actually play that game. But for now, that's the end of the video. No, really, that's it. I'm leaving. Goodbye.